Mindset Mavericks, your blueprint for bold thinking and boundless growth.
Welcome back to Mindset Mavericks. Today's guest is Isabelle Fortin, who knows leadership like few others do. Her leadership journey began in the Royal Canadian Air Force, where she learned discipline, adaptability, and the power of effective communication. So when she transitioned to the corporate world and encountered a harsh truth that leadership wasn't being used to uplift teams, it was isolating them. That realization fueled her mission to challenge traditional leadership models and champion a human-centered approach. So whether you're leading a team of 1 or a team of 100, Isabelle's story is going to inspire you to lead with empathy and purpose. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm really excited to get into all things leadership.
Thank you very much for having me, John.
And I did mention there a bit of your background, and you started off in the Royal Canadian Air Force. And I'd love to find out a little bit about how you got to where you are now and what made that leadership journey so important for you. So you can talk to us about your kind of growing up and wanting to go into the Air Force.
Well, being in the Air Force was the family business. So both my parents served. They actually met in Germany in the 1960s, and they got married there and had my sister and came back to Canada. And when I joined at the ripe age of 17, not even legal to either vote or drink alcohol, my brother was an Air Force pilot. So it never, as a kid, I never really questioned what I was going to do. And I think that in the back of my mind was the next step, the natural next step was that, out of high school, you join the military and that's the end of that. And I never really questioned, is that the right thing for me or isn't it? So I joined and I stayed for a decade and I loved every minute of it. Released because I wanted something different. I wanted something with less of a rigid structure. And I was met with a brutal awakening that, in the corporate world, it isn't better. It's, in my sense, actually much, much, much worse. So I really was brutally shocked by the lack of leadership skills, the lack of the real definition of leader. I find that most corporations put their people in managing positions and they call them the leadership positions, but they're not being leaders, they're being managers. So that took a long time for me to realize that that's exactly what was missing. I was kind of battling another battle on a personal front that was taking a lot of my time and my energy. So once that was healed and I was ready, I should say, to face the work part of my life, that's when I realized, okay, well, these people that are doing the best that they can, this through no fault of their own, aren't good leaders because they aren't provided the tools. They aren't taught leadership. They confuse management and leadership because that's, that leadership is a skill and they aren't providing leadership training. So that's when I decided to say, okay, I'm going to try to fix that gap and bridge that gap. So that's what brought me to where I am today.
So I'm really interested because I think there's the very stereotypical views of what leadership might be like in the military and a bit of a dictatorship. You're told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. But is that what your experience was like, or was it quite different?
It was quite different. You would think that in the military, it is extremely command and control, and there are situations where it is. But what military leadership has that is better than in corporate America is they put the mission first. And what that does is everybody's forced to put their egos aside. Now, I don't want to give egos a bad rap. Egos are there for a reason, and it's an extremely good reason, and we should tap into that a little bit. It shouldn't be riding shotgun, but we should use and utilize his ego for the way that it was designed for. So when you put egos aside and you're forced to put egos aside, what that does is if the rookie is better at doing a particular task over the 10-year sergeant, well, the rookie is going to get that job. And I'm not talking about leadership positions. I'm talking about actual tasks. And so what that does is it will go into the natural ability, and I like to call them the zone of genius. It will go into the natural abilities of the individual. So when you know, as a human being, when you know exactly what it is that you're contributing to the family, to a team, to your community, to anything and everything, when you know what it is that you bring that nobody else does, imagine what that does to you as a human. You feel like you're heard, seen, and valued. You know that you are contributing, and that makes you feel good about yourself. And that has an enormous benefit on the task, on the mission, on the group of people, and it also has a ripple effect on your dinner table. Because when you feel fulfilled at work and you go back to your spouse and your children and you're engaged and you're present and you know what you bring to this world that nobody else does, well, your presence, the quality of your presence is incredible. And so that has a ripple effect on their lives and where they go when you're not around. So there are schools for your children or for your spouse, their work. And it has a ripple effect on your community. And if you want to change the world, impact your community, because that's where it starts.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is you bring up the idea of the ego and how that gets in the way of making the correct decisions. Did you see any particular strategies that were used in the Air Force? Because it can be difficult to say, actually, I've been here 10 years, I've got a lot of experience, but I might not be the best person for that job. Is there a way to try and put your ego aside?
Well, okay, so one of the downfall of that in the military is that they force people's ego aside. And anything force is not necessarily always positive. So there's a lot of friction, sometimes actually a lot of friction in regards to that, because then that's when, the young bucks are going to fight over that, right?
Yeah.
So, but when you become aware that although your ego is extremely necessary, if you let it ride shotgun in your life, you're heading for, really, really, really cloudy waters. So when you can realize that, and when you can look at your ego and say, okay, you and I are going to partner up together. And sometimes I'm going to let you take the lead. And sometimes I'm going to ask you to sit in the back. And that is never automatic. You need to check yourself. You need to ask yourself, when you're in an extremely volatile state, or if you're in a pulse of anger or whatever, most of the time that's your ego. And you have to watch yourself. You have to be able to keep your cool. And what I've discovered, and I know I'm not the only one that's talking about that, is that the extremely good leaders, every single great leaders I've met, all have only one thing in common, and that is they are capable of self-regulating.
Is there a time that you can think of where so going back to military days, where you felt like you were challenged in that respect? Do you have any examples of where you've had to check your own ego and be like, actually, this is maybe where I need to put that aside?
Absolutely. If only with my significant other.
Yeah.
I share my life with a man that quote unquote forces me. He doesn't force anything, but his presence forces me to be the best version of myself, because he will not tolerate anger. He will not, and nor should he, by the way, he will not tolerate me screaming and being hot-blooded. And I am naturally hot-blooded. So I have to watch myself and I have to keep my composure, and so the fact that I share my life with someone like that, who is naturally calm and will watch his words and will speak with kindness always, forces me to watch my ego and to watch my, French temper, and wanting to go,
Yeah.
I can't do that. So there's numerous occasions in my life when, I threw a hissy fit and I looked like an idiot. And when I look back at these moments, I go, oh my goodness. All I accomplished by, raising my tone and being unkind was, nothing good for me, nothing good for anybody
Mm.
that I was having a conversation with, but nobody good for anybody watching. And truly, I looked like an idiot. And, that's not okay with me. I don't want to look like an idiot. I'm not an idiot. So it takes a lot. You almost have to be willing to be a witness to yourself once in a while. Because mindset, this, John, you have a podcast that's dedicated about mindset. Mindset and self-awareness is literally trying to read the label from inside the bottle. So you need to surround yourself with people that are going to bring out the best out of you, expect the best of you, and call you on your bullshit and say, like I'm working right now, and I don't mean to ramble on and on and on, but I'm working with a marketing firm in the US right now to help me with my business and the marketing of my business. And he doesn't let one word slide by, but he'll go, could you reframe that word, please? And I'm telling you, John, 9 times out of 10, when he catches words that aren't productive for me and that doesn't help me and that doesn't help what I'm trying to accomplish, I didn't even realize that I used that language. So you need to surround yourself with people who are very kindly not going to put up with that crap.
And like I say, a lot of it is that self-awareness, because I'm similar to you, fairly outspoken, quite enthusiastic in my responses, which isn't always helpful. And it's just making sure you do take that time to reflect and review how you're behaving, how you want to do things differently. Do you use anything in particular to help you do that, such as journaling, or is it really just through these conversations?
Well, the tools that I've started using decades ago is I start my day with gratitude, and I really sit down, and even if I'm in a rush and I woke up late, I'll skip over something else, but I won't skip over writing my gratitude. And for me, what works best is writing what I'm grateful for, but why I am grateful for it, because that helps me connect with the feeling of gratitude and that helps me connect with that energy. But the other thing is really looking at my behavior of the day at the end of the day before my shut eye, and looking at, okay, so I had this interaction, how does this interaction made me feel, and what could I have contributed differently, what could I have done differently to improve how this particular situation made me feel about me, about the other person. And sometimes the answer is, okay, so next time I'll walk away because I'm not going to fight anymore. When people, I think that as human beings, and I see that in the corporate world all of the time, as human beings, we tend to not believe people when they tell us who they are, and we should believe them the first time. And people tell us who they are by their actions or lack thereof sometimes. And so if something doesn't resonate with you, you should just walk away because you can move. You're not a tree, you're not attached, so you just can move. But people keep, bouncing their heads on the same rock, thinking that person's going to improve. And another thing that I've discovered in the past maybe 15 years is, and that's a hard truth, is we teach other people how to treat us. That's our responsibility. So by you putting up with a bad behavior, you're teaching the other person that you're going to tolerate that bad behavior. And that's in every walks of life, and that applies everywhere. A colleague, your spouse, your kids, your neighbors, that applies to everything. So setting boundaries is telling the other person, This is the consequence to that behavior. And
Yeah, no, I
people
think it's very,
use boundaries the wrong way.
yeah, and it is a healthy thing to do. It's difficult to set those boundaries with people, but it's certainly healthy. And I think it's particularly difficult in the workplace when you
Yes.
are speaking to bosses. And like you say, you get that bad leadership who don't respect boundaries, and it's difficult to challenge it. So if somebody is challenging your boundaries at work, how would you go about that in a psychologically safe way?
That's a tricky question, John, because when I work with a team, well, the first thing that I do with a team is I meet with the leader and I get the pulse from the leader, but then I get the pulse from the team. I don't know if there's one particular trick. I think that kindness is one of them. Empathy is another one, certainly. But I find that there's a lot of corporations out there that will spend, $5,000 or even $20,000 on one team building activity or one team building day. And, sometimes, well, actually here, most of the time it has to do with rock climbing or mountain climbing, or it has to do with something physical. And I always go, goodness, you're pissing off half of your team because they will physically not be able to follow and you're going to humiliate them. When in reality, I find that the simplest way is just recognizing the humanity in the other person. You don't need to, for you and I to get along, we don't need to both salsa dance or play pickleball. We don't need to both root for the same football team or, both play hockey. We just have to recognize that you are a human being walking this earth, doing the best that you can with who you are and the tools that you have in this particular moment. And if I can recognize that in you, I will be more likely to give you grace and put myself in your shoes and say, hey, listen, John, how can I help you? You really look like you're having a hard time with this particular thing or this particular task. So how can I support you? Instead of, oh, he didn't do this and he didn't do that and blah, 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 blah. And I get 9 companies out of 10, John, that I work with.
Mm.
The leaders will tell me in the first 30 minutes of our first meeting, will say, my team they're fighting for power. And I always go, no, they're not. They're fighting for recognition. They want to know what is special about them. They want to know what they bring to the table that nobody else does. They want to feel seen, heard, and valued. And when you do that, the infighting stops.
I think there's a couple of things we want to discuss. Just some really great points you brought up, and we'll certainly go into having that empathy for your colleagues. But one of the things you did touch on is those corporate days, kind of forced fun that a lot of companies do kind of push as one of the team training days, etc. And that can be games, it can be all sorts of manner of things. And like I say, it's quite an easy way to alienate people as well, whether it is you've got team members who are shy and don't want to get playing games. You've got ones who aren't interested in doing physical activities, which is, as you say, one of the things that's pushed quite frequently. Is there a correct way of doing team training days and trying to build that connection through team activities?
My God, I'm going to check my ego for this answer. It's the biggest load of crap I've ever heard. Truly, every company that I go into and that have done this kind of activity, it only destroyed morale and destroyed the unity of the team building more than it accomplished anything positive. When I work with a team, I work on the individuals first because great teams are built one person at a time. And that's, although it is my slogan, it's not only a slogan, it's words to live by. So by tapping into each individual first, then you can see, okay, so this person and this person are clashing because they don't recognize the common goal and how they can speak with one another with kindness. And when I'm down to the group workshop of my service, the first thing that we do is sit together and we go through everybody's psychometric test. Not what they told me in private, because that always remains private, but by saying, okay, so this, who do you think has the most of this particular need or particular value or particular motivation? And then it tells me how much or how little they know one another. And knowing a person is not about, if you know, if they're married, they have kids and they own a dog, and if their parents are still alive. Knowing somebody is, how do I communicate with this person efficiently? How do I show up for this person efficiently? And when you tap into that, and this is the most simplest thing to do, and yet the most complicated things to do. Because communication, the biggest thing about communication that every single person I meet has or does or has a preconceived notion and is wrong, is that communication is about what I need to say. It's not. Communication is about, how do you need to hear it? Communication is about the other person. It's not about you. Men can communicate better with horses than with other men. And I mean man as in mankind.
Yeah.
Because when you are in the presence of a horse, you don't expect them to speak your language. And yet when you communicate with another human being, you expect them to speak your language. That's not the way it works. I had a horse for 15 years. And when I got into his box, he was 1,600 pounds. When I got into his box, I needed to adapt to him and speak a language he understands. So why can't I do that with you?
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. I know there's a lot of different kind of tests out there which test for those kind of things, Myers-Briggs, disc training. Is there any particular ones that you recommend?
I use Nova. It's a company from Switzerland. I've done all of them. And what I love about the Nova assessment is that it is, in my opinion, and I've been doing this for quite a while, in my opinion, is the most complete one. And I'll tell you why. Because Nova not only will tell you the cognitive and behavioral and communication preferences, but it will go into the deep motivations and core values of the individual. And although your cognitive preference could be compared to the kind of car that you drive, your motivation is the fuel you put in that car. It's the reason you do what you do. It's the reason you get up and go in the morning. So it is extremely important to know what motivates people, because that's another false belief leaders have, is, how do I motivate my people? You don't. You can't motivate anybody to do anything anytime. What you need to do is tap into their motivations. And if you don't know what these are, well, good luck with that.
Yeah, it makes me think there's something I've used in Teams, which is MSR. And it kind of taps into a lot of what you're speaking about. So M is for meaning, just identifying what's that person's purpose in a team, what drives them, what makes them feel valued and part of that team. Safety is or S is for safety, which is, again, psychological safety, having those tough conversations and knowing there's security around those conversations, that you're able to speak up without being reprimanded or over-talked and all those kind of things. And he asks for resources. Have they got the right resources in place? And that could be, is there sufficient staffing? Are they using old rubbish laptops which don't actually work, and that's making them lose motivation? So yeah, I really buy into the whole people first. And I think I do see it in my own team. And it's like I say, what do people need? Whether there's people like myself, I'm not very good with getting praised. I'm very much like, I'm doing my job. What are you telling me good work for? That seems ridiculous. But there's other people who very much want the pat on the back and want the praise, and that's what drives them. So it really is about knowing your team well. And apart from those psychological tests that you've mentioned, what things or good practices can we put in place to try and make sure you are getting to know your teams and building that connection and relationship?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I think that understanding that the leader's job is to be in service of the people that work, of your direct reports. So individually, meeting with them on their turf, at their desk, and not. I understand that some offices it's just not possible because it's the bullpen and it's just 50 people in the same room. I understand that, but trying to meet your direct reports on one, not in a group, on one, every single week, 10-15 minutes. How you doing? What's your day like? What would you work on last week? What are you working on this week? What can I do for you? Are there tools you're missing to do your job properly? Or let them vent if that's what they need. And in teams that are absolutely phenomenal and that are great and are extremely high performing, you're allowed to do three things. The first one is you're allowed to ask questions. And I'm going to air quote this as big as the universe, even the stupid questions, even though I don't believe there are any stupid questions, I'm going to say that anyway. So you're allowed to ask stupid questions. Because if you don't allow people to ask questions, then learning is over. You're done. The second thing that you absolutely have to do is you have to let people admit that they made a mistake. You have to set a place, a time, an emotional safety to allow people to admit they made a mistake. Because if you don't do that, then growth is over. They won't grow anymore. That's it. You're done. And the last thing is you need to let people bring ideas, crazy ass, stupid, out of the box, way in the left field ideas. Because the worst thing you can do is have your team members leave their best ideas in the car before they walk in the office. And if you don't do that, then innovation is over. So in a great team, these three things are allowed. But here's the kicker, John. All these three things is without shame and without being bullied by anybody. So that's where empathy and emotional, steps in.
Yeah, just touching on the point about mistakes, I think it's just so important to, like I say, allow those mistakes to happen, allow them to be brought to the surface and learn from them. I think a lot of workplaces seem to frown upon it, but all you're doing by that is just driving. The mistakes are still going to happen. They're just going to be hidden.
Yeah, you're asking them to lie to you.
Which is very unhealthy. Yeah.
Yeah. If you punish people for making mistakes, you're asking them to lie to you.
Yeah, I think my favourite phrase out of everything you've just said was how you termed it, that you're serving the people you're leading, which is a great way of putting it. And weirdly, it's not something I've really thought about before, but that's entirely the way it should be. You're there to enable your team to do an amazing job. And the best way to do that is to serve them and give them what they need.
Yes, absolutely. I heard an interview with Richard Branson that dates more than likely over a decade ago now. And the interviewer asked him, how do you, satisfy your client? How do you, what do you do for client satisfaction and to bring the best value and you take care of your clients? And Richard Branson said, I don't. I take care of my people and they take care of my clients. And, I don't think he's going to go hungry anytime soon.
No, but no, it's a great way of reframing it. So yeah, I love that phrase. So was there a particular moment for you that made you commit to building teams one person at a time? Was there something specific that happened, or was it just your observations over a long period of time?
Well, I heard a quote by a Scottish woman called Caroline McHugh in a TEDx. And that quote changed my life and it changed what I do for a living and how I do it. And the quote is, individuality really is all it's cracked up to be. And when I heard that quote, her TEDx, I highly recommend everybody in the world go listen to that particular TEDx. You can find it on YouTube. It has, I think, 16 million views or something. But she talks about individuality and the power and the art of being yourself. And I must have listened to that TEDx 100 times in my life. And that particular quote changed everything. And although I was already empowering team members and I was already doing the work that I did, it shifted the way that I did it. Because she's right, individuality really is all it's cracked up to be. And most of us don't take enough room to be who we are. And taking the room to be who you are doesn't mean that you are blocking somebody else from being who they are. But we confuse the two. We think if I take too much room, I'm going to take somebody else's. But that's not how it is. Actually, it expands. The more I take room, mine, not anybody else, and the more I dare to be who I am, then the more inspired you're going to be to being who you are. And that is the best thing in the world. Although, whether you believe in God or don't, or believe in the universe, or you call it whatever that power you want to call it, because I truly believe it's all the same power anyway, you weren't created by mistake. You're not on this planet at this particular time by mistake. So dare to be who that person is, because the world needs it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you can struggle with as being a leader and having a team is how you actually balance that individuality and creating a people first culture while you're still driving results and trying to meet your business goals. Because obviously with individuality, there can be friction amongst teams. So how do you balance nurturing that individual as an individual while still driving your metrics, whether that's whatever KPIs you've got, so driving results and meeting business goals?
Well, I think that when you set clear visions as to what the mission is, and you empower your people to care and choose the right teammates that is going to be engaged in your mission, and that your mission statement is not only a slogan written on the wall when you go in the business, but it is truly embodied in people's daily life and daily work. You don't need to worry about your KPI. You need to worry about your people, and they're gonna do the job. However, I understand why leaders don't do that. Is because command and control is much easier on the leader, and that's the end of that. It is. I know it is. And that's one of the first things before I even send that contract to someone who's going to hire me. I tell them, I'm going to make you work hard. I'm going to make you, the leader, work harder than everybody else, because it's your job to adapt to them and not the other way around. But command and control is having them adapt to you. But, that's what Hitler does, or that's what Hitler did. And that's what Putin does. And that's what the new US clown is doing. With the results we're seeing now. I know I'm not going to make friends with that comment, and I truly don't care. It's just, that's what dictatorship is.
Yeah.
Is it effective? Sometimes it is, of course. But is it the right way or the best way and the most efficient way? No, it's not.
And it's embracing exactly what you've spoken about on here. It's being your authentic self and just putting yourself out there. If that's how you feel about it, that's what you need to do, and just be true to yourself.
Exactly.
I'm really interested in an aspect of, you talked about psychometric testing and having the right people in the right teams. Is psychometric testing something you would use in the actual recruiting process to make sure you've got the right person? You do?
I do. Yeah, I do. I was recently called by a company here who had hired 10 days prior. They had spent $33,000 on a headhunter to hire this accountant. And 10 days later, out of a group of 7, 5 of them wanted to quit because of this new arrival. And so they hired me. And I went, okay. So I did the psychometric test, and when I do the psychometric, so when I tell you that I start with the individual, I have a 90-minute meeting with every single individual before I meet the leader, before I debrief, I should say, not before I meet, but before I debrief the leader. And at the end, I ended up saying, you hired the wrong person for the team. She's qualified. She's extremely qualified as far as skills are concerned. But as far as personality is concerned, she doesn't fit in your group. And they didn't listen to me, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. That's quite okay. And they waited another 3 months. They lost one team member because of that, and they ended up firing her. She wasn't a bad person. She was just the wrong fit. So when now they had their two accountants down, they had to hire, and then they went, okay, we understand now. So they just hired one, and part before that person signed the contract, they had me do a psychometric test on them just to make sure that they fit in the organization and they fit in the value of the corporation, because that was very important for them. So yeah, absolutely. Doing psychometric tests, on the way in is extremely beneficial.
When things like that do happen, so you have these psychometric tests, you've got a team in front of you. When you do see things that don't really align and can cause conflict, are you seeing that as beneficial to be able to find resolutions? Is it
Yeah,
helpful to find resolutions, or is it really just identifying what the problem is?
absolutely. I had a meeting yesterday afternoon actually with a team. Two people aren't getting along. Like they don't, one speak, like it's like one speaks Russian and the other one speaks French, and there's nothing in common. And we had a meeting together, and I call these meetings my prenuptial agreement, because what I do is I bring them together and I go, okay, so I, I had a meeting with them one on one to understand how they feel about the other, and where it's hurting them, when the behavior of the other person is hurting them. But once they come together and we create a safe space for both of them to express how they feel, and they feel heard, seen, and valued again, right? We're back to that, feeling heard, seen, and valued. And when we do that, and I explain, okay, so and so, their need, when you speak with them, their need, and that word is extremely important. It's not a pet peeve. It's not a hissy fit, it is a need. They need something from you. So their need is X, Y, and Z. And the other person, we'll call them Bob, that person's need is this. This is how they see the world. This is how their brain is wired. This is how they connect to the world. And so, in a safe environment, with emotional safety, with obviously physical safety, when they can come together and say, okay, so from now on, we commit to seeing the other person's point of view. Because it is not the right time, although it is possible, it is not the right time to come up with the best strategies to deal with conflict when you're in the conflict. Because conflict is going to arise. There's no doubt about that. Regardless of who with, I have two siblings. I fought with the both of them. I had a dad. I fought with him. That's just human nature. I see parents fighting with kids, grown ass kids. That's conflicts is going to arise. So when you build the strategy, how are you going to deal with one another when conflicts arise? Then you can avoid it much, much easier. Now, when you're in the conflict, sometimes you need to call a timeout and say, you go to your corner, you go to your corner, calm the F down, and then we're going to come back together and come up together with the resolution. But when I'm called in a conflict situation, just by sitting with them and allowing them to vent for 90 minutes, allowing them the space to scream, yell, swear. I swear like a sailor in my private life. To tell them, to go to hell. They're not there, but to tell them to go to hell, that they're worthless and all that good stuff. Once you're allowed to do that, you get over it rather quickly. And there's a study that if an emotion is acknowledged and is allowed to live, it lasts 90 seconds. So it's when you try to suppress your emotions and you don't give yourself, or you aren't given the permission to vent it and to scream it and to do whatever, then you bottle it up inside and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So when they come to me and they're, I need them, it's like, okay, go. You have 90 seconds, go. Scream. Yell, scream at me, tell me I'm a dumbass, vent it out. Live that emotion and allow yourself to live that emotion. And most of the time, John, it doesn't even last 90 seconds. And after about 45, they start laughing because they
Yeah.
see how ridiculous they're being.
Yeah, it's a fascinating little stat there. I didn't realise that's how it worked, but no, you can completely see it. And it's difficult when you're in those spaces when things are really emotional. It's very subjective. You've got anger, and it is down to that communication and not really listening part of the time. And I think it's just having an opportunity to say, "This is what I've heard. Is that what you've meant?"
Yes.
Because I think a lot of the times what you hear isn't at all what they're intending to say. And you just rewrite the script. So I think it's just having that space to say, actually, this is what I heard. This is how I interpret it. Is that what you meant? And actually, I think a lot of problems could be cleared out if there was those lines of communication there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I have that in my private life too. My significant other's mother tongue is Spanish, mine is French. And he comes from a different culture than I do. And even though he's been living here for a long, long, long time, and sometimes he'll say something and I go, what? Now I've learned to calm the hell down and do what you just said. Is like, okay, hang on. And now I laugh. Okay, let's back it up for a second. Okay. I heard this. And he go, no, no.
Yeah.
I would never say that. Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so please say it again. Or even, he speaks 7 languages. Use a different language. Use English or even say it in Spanish. I'm okay. Maybe I'll understand better. So it's just, you're absolutely right. But that's self-regulation.
Yeah.
Just that's exactly what self-regulation is. It's like, okay, hang on. Okay, hang on. I'm being triggered. This is tapping into something that's not fun for me. Let's check if that was your intention or not.
Yeah. But yeah, so everyone's got their own experiences from the past, things they carry over, and it's easy to hit those nerves. And it does take that time just to sit back and think, actually, no, I need clarification here. And ask those clarifying questions. And a lot of the times those issues be sorted out very quickly, but it is difficult to do in a moment. One of the things that I'm interested if you've got any tips for is for someone who doesn't fit or who feels that empathy doesn't come naturally. Are there any exercises or habits you'd recommend to strengthen that skill?
What skill is that?
Of actually showing and having empathy for people. Because it can be quite easy to be fairly dismissive of other people's feelings or not really understand where their pain points are. So if you've got skills to actually strengthen the skill of empathy.
Well, the first thing that I want to say about empathy is it's like personal hygiene. You have to do it daily. So it's like gratitude. You have to practice daily. There's only 3% of the world population that is born without empathy. And we call them sociopath. And that's worldwide is 3% of the population. More than likely, you're not part of the 3% and you're part of the 97. So you need to just practice it. And a good question to ask yourself is, if I was in this person's shoes, if you're having a spat with somebody, if I was in this person's shoes, how would I receive what I just said? And that again takes self-regulation, because when we're in the moment, where we're in anger, walk away is a good tip, and breathe is a good tip. I remember that when I started using empathy in my personal life deliberately, and because I've said that before earlier in the podcast, I'm hot-blooded, and I would just take a pause and count in my head. 10, 9, And I would count backwards in German because I can't do it as quickly as I do it in French or
Okay.
English. Right? So use any tool, anything that's going to make you or impose on you to slow down before you respond. Because the thing with anger is that you're this angry and then I retort, and then you're this angry and
Mhm.
then you retort, and we're this angry and it escalates. So if one of them just stops, then you're, first of all, disarming yourself, disarming the other person, and allowing the moment to just breathe and just be there, be still and wait and breathe. So I would do a breathing exercise where I breathe in for 5 seconds, I breathe out for 5 seconds, and I did that sometimes 3 times before I replied.
Okay.
And just by the fact that I would breathe, it would calm my nervous system, because there's something physiological that happens to your body when you're in anger, and the cortisol goes out and the adrenaline goes up. And, so when you're just doing that, you're helping your nervous system to deal with that. And you're allowing the other person also the room to realize what they just said and how they feel about it. And if that's not enough, then walk away. And you can walk away extremely kindly. It doesn't have to be your, shutting the door and, pouting. And it doesn't have to be that. You can literally say, okay, I think that we're going in the wrong direction here. I'm going to leave. We'll come back when we'll both come. That works too.
Yeah, I think we've had some great tips on lots of different methods of communication and facilitating communication. It does apply equally in business and just personal lives too. I think what I'd like to ask about is some of the common leadership mistakes that you're seeing. And I know you go into lots of teams, you're helping build teams and improve teams' work ethic and how well they work together. So what are some of the common mistakes that you see?
Command and control would be the first one, the most common and the most destructive. Another thing that I see extremely often in corporations, and I've tapped into that a little bit earlier, it's mistaking leadership or management for leadership. It's not the same thing. A leader's job is to take care of the people in their charge. A manager's job is to get the job done. It's not only what's written on paper, it's the vibration that comes out of that, right? So, lack of empathy, lack of listening. Shut up. Seriously, shut up. Sit down, shut up. And let the other person speak. And not establishing the three things that I said earlier. They need to be allowed to share stupid ideas, ask stupid questions, and admit that they made a mistake without, being bullied or shamed or belittled by the rest of the team, and first and foremost by the team leader and by the leader. Yeah. So, and empathy and gratitude and adaptability, they're three things that are extremely, extremely important. And humility is important. Admitting to your team that you made a mistake, admitting to your team that you don't have the answer, but you know what? So it's okay, because we're going to figure it out together. But some people think that it makes you look weak. It doesn't. It empowers them. And if I really want to add one truly important thing, is you get trust by giving trust. That's how you get trust. So trust them first. You're the leader, so that's what a leader does. Trust them first, and then they will trust you.
Yeah, I think that's a great foundation for building a team from scratch. If we go to a situation, for example, where, say, one of our listeners, they feel like they've made some mistakes as a leader and they need to course correct, do you have particular advice around that? I'm sure that's something you experience in your coaching that you do. So how do you go about trying to course correct when you have made mistakes?
First of all, admit that you made one and ask your team, what do they need? They know what they need. I remember one of the last jobs that I had as a military, I worked at the recruiting center, and brand spanking new captain, ripe age of 24, became the boss of the bullpen. So all the privates and the corporal and the master corporals doing the job and doing the enrollment processes with the candidates. And and it was not working. He was cocky and arrogant, and he was 22 and he knew everything. No, I think he was a little older than 22, maybe 27, but regardless, he was young, arrogant, cocky, and he knew it all. And one day we had a meeting, all of us together there were 15 clerks, and all of us together with him. And he said, okay, so from now on, we're going to do this. We're going to do it this way. And this is, we're going to do that, without explaining why we're going to do that. And I remember one of the master corporal raised his hand and said, okay, so I understand you're the boss, and I'm going to respect that you're the boss. I understand and I respect your rank and your position. But with all due respect, we've done that before. Before you showed up and before you got promoted to captain, we've done that. And it doesn't work. And here's why. Points, facts, no emotions, facts. Ding, 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 ding. And you're a captain and you've been in the military maybe 8 years. And amongst us, the 15 of us, we have more than 150 years experience. So ask your team. What can I do better for you? Ask your team. They know, they have the answer. They know what is not working and they know why, and they can tell you. But that takes humility.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things spoken about today. If I was to summarize, I'd say it seems to be about having empathy for your team, finding what their purpose is.
Yes.
And really just listening to your team. But yeah. My final takeaway really from it is just, like you say, you're there to in service of your team.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
but go ahead.
Sorry, you go.
I was going to say, but you know what? A lot of the pushback that I get when I have this kind of conversation with leaders, a lot of the pushback that I get is, well, yeah, but what does that do for me? And that's okay. I understand that. We're all a little bit self-absorbed, and I get that. I don't judge that. And I kind of look at them. I said, well, how are you going to look to your CEO when the numbers increase for your department, but nobody else does? How are you going to be viewed, seen, valued, heard as a leader with the CEO or the board of directors if you're already the CEO, or your clients, when your team is the best performing, the most efficient, the most profitable? So it is not, yes, it is putting yourself in their shoes. That's what empathy is. Yes, it is putting yourself in service. Yes, of course. When you're communicating with somebody, when you take their point of view and you use their language, you get what you want. So this is not all selfless, kumbaya, Girl Scout attitude. It's because it's giving you what you want. So it can be extremely selfish. It can be. If that's what what drives you, that's fine. I have nothing against people that are self-centered. I really don't. Because if you as a leader, you understand that by empowering your people, you get what you want, win-win, win. Win, 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 win. Everybody wins. So why wouldn't you do that?
100%. And as you say, if you're empowering your team, you're giving trust to your team, you're allowing them to run with their jobs without micromanagement, you're getting your own time back to focus on what's most important for your role. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. But yeah, I've got just towards the end of the interview, there's a quick fire round I do, which is to get to know you a little bit more and ask a little bit around your mindset as well. So it's just four simple questions. You might have covered some of these already. But is there one particular book, or it could be a podcast, or I know you've mentioned TEDx talks as well, but is there something like that that's had the biggest influence on you, and why?
Professionally, most definitely the TEDx talk by Carolyn McHugh, and it is called The Art of Being Yourself. And I've told you earlier, I must have listened to it about 100 times. It lasts 20 minutes. It's on YouTube. For me, in my professional life, that is what has had the most impact on me.
So a little task for the listeners this week is to go and view that video and just let us know in the comments what you take away from it, what your favourite part was.
And if you want, I can even send it to you so you can put it in the show notes.
100%, yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. That'd be great. And do you have, you've mentioned one habit, but did you have any particular habits you practice every day that helps you get into the right mindset? You mentioned gratitude.
Gratitude.
And specifically
Gratitude. Gratitude is the fastest way. It is. It's been proven now. It's not only, again, it's not woohoo or kumbaya or esoteric. Gratitude. And I've even trained myself to feel grateful to the people who are pushing me back, pushing my buttons, waking up anger inside of me, because without them, I can't heal them. So yeah, no, gratitude. Yeah.
And do you notice what that does for you throughout the day? How does that impact your day?
It makes everything better. I feel it. If for some, God-given reason, I skip the morning of writing in my gratitude journal, I feel that my mood is different throughout the day. So yeah, no, it helps me focus on the positive, and positive in, positive out. So it helps me show up better for myself first. And if I show up better for myself, I show up better for the world.
But yeah, fantastic answer, thank you. And if there's what is the biggest lesson in life or business that you wish you'd learned sooner?
Okay, you got me there. That if I want to live, no, actually, I'm going to give you a quote on that answer. Nothing of significance is ever accomplished alone. So if I want to have the most impact, the best life for myself, for my loved ones, for my community, for my family, for the world, I need to bring people with me. And in order to bring people with me, I have to meet them where they are. Truly wish I had known that in my 20s.
And I love that quote.
Yeah.
That's a great quote. And
Thank
the
you.
final one for me is, if you could enter one person into the Mindset Mavericks Hall of Fame, who would it be and why?
My maternal grandmother. My maternal grandmother has had an extremely hard life. She stopped school in grade 2 because she was the oldest of the family, and she was born in 1936. So that's just what you did. No, she was born in 1906. I'm sorry. So that's just what you did to take care of your siblings. She's had 10 pregnancies, 5 miscarriages. My mother passed. My mom was born in 1941 and she was a preemie. And at the time in 1941s, they didn't have incubators. You gave birth at home and without electricity, by the way. And my mother spent the first months of her life in the oven because that's how
Wow.
you dealt with preemies. She was supposed to die. She wasn't supposed to live. So when she was diagnosed with cancer at age 35, and she told her mother that she was sick, that she was grade 4 lung cancer and that she was going to die, I'm not saying that my grandmother took that as a joke or that she thought that it was funny or pleasant. Of course she didn't. But her outlook on that event is still affecting me to this day. And what she told her then 35-year-old daughter was, well, Cecilia, you weren't supposed to live, and God gave you 35 years and a husband that adores you and 3 beautiful kids. So count your blessings. And that is superhuman.
Yeah.
That's gratitude embodied in every cell of her being. So that would be her. She never stopped smiling. She never stopped laughing. She never stopped singing, ever.
Yeah, it's fantastic when you hear stories like that, and people who do say generally relatives, and it's the people who you might think everyone's looking up to, whether it's celebrities or sports people or scientists, and actually you look in your own lives and there's some amazing people you just should be building those connections with, hearing those fantastic life stories that quite often is just bypassed and not really tapped into. And I think there's a load of great mindset tips and tricks from all these people around us that we could be soaking up and relishing. So yeah, I think that's another great answer. Thank you. And just at the end of the interview now, so I'd love to ask, what's one thing you'd like our listeners to take away from this conversation?
Dare to be who you are. Take all of the space. Take all of your space. Own it. Claim it. It's yours. It's your birthright. Take it. Don't wait for people to give it to you. They're not gonna. And if I want to quote Brene Brown, don't walk into the world looking for evidence that you don't belong, because unfortunately you're always going to find it. So just claim your birthright. It's yours. Take it. Dare to take it and impact the world in the best and most positive way you can. One person.
And what a great place to end. So thank you very much. If anyone wants to find out a little bit more about yourself and what you do, where's the best place to find you?
2 places to find me. The first one is on my website, and it is againsttheordinary.org. So Against the Ordinary is not only my motto, but it is the name of my company. So againsttheordinary.org. And I hang out on LinkedIn. So Isabelle Fortin. And there's a few of us. Look, the one with the purple hair.
Perfect. And I'll put, again, some links in the show notes. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John.